As-salamu alaykum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Alhamdulillah. Okay, I'm going to be on 13th gear today, although I haven't had any coffee. No, thank you. I want to begin first and foremost by welcoming you to the Islamic Society Leading American Muslims, an organization that was established to do da'wah, to invite people to Islam, the true and peaceful message of Islam, and then to educate and empower and nurture them in their path wherever they are. So over the years, we've had many people that were born into Muslim families. They got detached from Islam for whatever reasons, and they come back, and we are an accept you for where you are group. No judgment, no criticism, no castigation, no indictment is allowed here. If that's what you're looking for, you're in the wrong place. So we're here to love and nurture and to administer mercy and hope, inshallah. So I would like to ask you to pray for Robina. Robina used to attend our class very regularly in the south side of town. She passed away this week. She had a massive stroke, and we visited her in the hospital. She was her janazah was yesterday, so please make dua for her soul and for her family. I officiated the daughter of the marriage of her daughter Miriam, and Maysoon's grandmother is in Philistine, has called the family together because her health is failing, and I think she's 90. Maysoon's not paying attention. That's okay. Please pray for Dr. Abdul Fattah. He's a beloved brother of mine, and he has severe Parkinson's. Taysir Kiwan has fourth stage cancer. And Claudette, who joined us, and many of you got to know, sent us a message this morning and asked that we pray for her today. She went back to Puerto Rico, and so I'd like all of us to please make dua for her. Inshallah. So, those are the prayer requests. I'd like to welcome those who are with us for the first time today, and we'll start over here. And if you would please introduce yourself. And I caught her with food in her mouth. I apologize.
My name is Shannon Gunter. Nice to meet you all.
Okay. And we have a treat today after class. Shannon will be doing her shahada publicly. Alhamdulillah. So, and of course, Mika and Doug were here with us for an iftar. And so we're very happy to have you in the Sunday class, and we pray that you'll become a vital part of our family and join us for spiritual and physical food, such as you've seen in the kitchen today. Also, we have another sister with us for the first time today. Sam is with us, and so we welcome you. She likes to be called Sam instead of Samantha, so welcome, welcome, welcome. We love you all, and we pray that you will find love here, inshallah. I would be remiss not to talk about the virtues of Shawwal. It's a very short presentation. It's only 7 slides, but I would not want you to miss this out. So, in Alhamdulillah Ta'ala, نحمده ونستعينه ونستغفره ونعوذ بالله من شرور أنفسنا ومن سيئات أعمالنا ومن يهده الله فلا مضل له ومن يضلل فلا هادي له وأشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله. Indeed, all praise is due to Allah. We praise Allah. We seek refuge with Allah from the evil in our soul and from our sinful deeds. Those who are guided by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, no one can misguide them. Those who are not guided by Allah, there is no guide for them. I bear witness that there is no God, there is no deity worthy of worship except Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and that Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam is his final servant and messenger. O you who believe, revere Allah as Allah alone should be revered, and die not except as Muslims. Amma ba'd. So, alhamdulillah, all of you passed your Ramadan with flying colors, achieved the goals that you wrote down, inshallah, and more. And so now we have another great month. We entered on the Eid into the month of Shawwal, the 10th month of the Islamic calendar. And in this month, fasting 6 days is encouraged. It's not obligatory, but it's encouraged. And when you see the blessings in it, I think that you'll want to make it obligatory for yourself. I want you to take a notice of the word mustahab and wajib, because we're going to be looking at this in the latter presentation today. You're going to need to be aware of some of these terms. It is recommended for the Muslim to fast 6 days of Shawwal, and in it there is a great virtue and an immense reward. So for sisters that might have not been able to fast for various and sundry reasons, you want to make up your fast in this month if possible. And for those of us who want to get the rewards that you're going to hear about in this presentation, it doesn't matter when you do it, you just need to do it before the end of Shawwal, 6 days. You could do it on Tuesdays and Thursdays, you could, however you want to do it. Whoever fasts these 6 days will have recorded for him or her a reward as if he had fasted a whole year. So this is authentic hadith. It's a virtue that we would not want to miss out on. Abu Ayyub reported that the Messenger of Allah ﷺ said, whoever fasts Ramadan and follows it with 6 days of Shawwal, it will be as if he fasted for a lifetime. So there are a number of ahadith, and this is in Muslim, to this effect. So this is too good of a deal to miss. Spiritual deal. Okay. The Prophet ﷺ explained that when he said whoever fasts for 6 days after Eid al-Fitr has completed the year, whoever does a good deed, hasana, will have 10 hasana like it. So when you do a good deed, you get like the credit for 10. This is great blessing. According to another report, Allah has made for each hasana 10 like it. So a month is like fasting 10 months, and fasting 6 days completes the year. And there's a lot of beautiful tafsir on this particular hadith, but I just want to give you the basics so that you can avail yourself to this blessing. The Hanbali and Shafi Fuqaha explain that fasting 6 days of Shawwal after fasting Ramadan makes it as if one has fasted for an entire year of obligatory fast. So if you look at the multiplication of the days on the previous slide, and you want to have a mathematical challenge, you can see how that works. Okay. But I just want you to see the blessings. Another of the important benefits of fasting 6 days of Shawwal is that it makes up for any shortfalls in a person's obligatory Ramadan fast, because no one is free from shortcomings or sins that have a negative effect on his or her fasting. So let's say you didn't fast with ruh, maybe you had a deficiency in one of your days of fasting, then by doing this you can actually sort of make up for it. On the day of resurrection, some of the nafil deeds will be taken to make up the shortcomings in his obligatory deeds. As the Prophet ﷺ said, the first thing for which people will be brought to account on the day of resurrection will be their salah. Our Lord, may Allah be glorified and exalted, will say to his angels, although he knows best, look at the salah of my slave, whether it is complete or incomplete. If it is perfect, it will be recorded as perfect, and if something is lacking, he will say, look and see whether my slave did any voluntary nafil prayers. If he or she did some voluntary prayers, Allah will say, complete the obligatory actions of my slave from his voluntary actions. So this is why it is so important to do nafils, to do that which is not obligatory. So for example, we talk about 2 sunnahs and 2 fards at Fajr. We talk about 4 and 2 or at Dhuhr. These sunnahs will help cover for the deficits in your farida, in your fard actions. Okay, it's very important, and so that's all I got for you on Shawwal, but it's a lot. It's a huge benefit from Allah Subhanahu wa Taala. Okay, yeah, I'm not going to move anything there. I'm just adjusting me up here. Let's see. Okay. Okay, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Please. And so if you'll remember, last week we did a lecture on the role of the thoughts that come from the shayateen. So the role of the thoughts that come from the shayateen, is that intrinsic or extrinsic? That is extrinsic. It's something outside of ourselves. Today we're going to talk about the messages and the thoughts and the inclinations that come from within ourselves. So remember, and for those of you who weren't in the last class, I'll be glad to talk about it with you afterwards to sort of bring clarification. Or you can go back on our webpage, see May soon to sign up if you're new in the class today, and you can see the previous lectures, because it would be great for you to have that foundation, inshallah. So, here we go, right into the new subject at hand. Evil suggestion is not whispered into the heart of humankind only from outside by the shayateen, from among men and jinns, but also by the self, the nafs and the ego. So last week we talked about how the shayateen comes and whispers and then withdraws, waswas al-khannas. Then he whispers again and he withdraws. This week we're talking about how our self, our ego, our own personal desires whisper to us. Everybody clear about that? Just give me a nod so I know. We are recording this, so if you have questions, I would encourage you to write them down. I would encourage you to take notes at my classes, because it will really help you to study this material. And by the loving kindness and generosity of Maysoon, there are notebooks available for anyone who would like to avail themselves to one. This is her gift to you there. You even get a color choice, red and yellow, black and green, I think, or blue and green. All right. So, but also by the self, the nafs and the ego of humankind from within. His or her own wrong theories misguide his or her intellect, his or her own unlawful motives and desires influence his or her power of discrimination, will and power of judgment astray, and it is not only the shayateen from outside, but within humankind, his or her Satan of the nafs. So it's very interesting, because in the therapeutic world that I work in, we talk about your demons from within. So people come to therapy to work on their demons. And so this is very apropos when you look at this in the context of the Arabiya, and you look at it in context of Islam. Because our ego beguiles us. Very important for you to recognize that if yourself is more important than what Allah and His Messenger said, this is actually shirk. Because it means that my opinion, I worship it. And my opinion is right, and that's the reality, and that's the fact. So how many times have you had a conversation with somebody and they said, well, the facts are, really it was just their point of view or their subjective reality. The only real facts, the only reality that we can count on is that which Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has said. Because this brain will delude us. And as I use this example over and over and over again, if you're in the desert and you're dying of thirst, your brain will create an oasis of water which you will die trying to get to. And how many times, and I've said this one before too, have you been somewhere, you would have sworn that you saw somebody, and when you saw them, you said, oh, I saw you the other night, I just didn't get a chance to speak to you. You said, no, you didn't see me, I wasn't there. Oh, I would have sworn I saw you. So this will delude you. But the intellect of the heart is sound. That's why we call it sahih, or sound knowledge. It's not daif. It doesn't have any doubt. It doesn't have any weakness. And so Surah 50, Surah Qaf, verse 16, indeed it is we who created humankind and fully know what their souls whisper to them. So you see in this verse, it's not saying what the shayateen, the satans, the demons whisper to you. It's saying what? What your soul whispers to you. And this is why when I tell you the word nafs and all the different transliterations and translations of the word, I hope and pray that this class will help you get clarity on that. Because this particular context is talking about your nafs, your own whims and desires and impulses, opinions, and those kind of things. In the khutbah of necessity, we always say we seek refuge with Allah from the evil in our deeds. I said it when I started today. So this is what it's talking about. The evil of ourselves, our nafs, our strong desires. Their characteristics is that they thump and thud in the heart over and over and over again. It is that same pounding thought ruminating. So what it looks like or sounds like or feels like is we will talk about our thoughts haunting us. And we will say, my heart is heavy. My heart is sad. Yes? If you think or relate to what I'm saying, just give me a nod so I'm getting some body language here. Perhaps you need a cup of coffee. It's okay if you just go get it. But it's these thoughts. Remember that everything, all of these things, whether it is demonic thought, your nafs thought, your ego thoughts, angelic thoughts, thoughts from Allah, they all begin with a thought.
Call it noise.
You call it
Noise.
Mm-hmm. Now, I want to talk a minute in terms of gazing at what we are not supposed to gaze at. The more we fixate on the sensory, the more clouded the heart becomes, and this is why fornication begins with the gaze. So we are told in Islam to lower our gaze. One of the reasons that television is so bad for us is that we are opening a door to things that are haram. The television is a door. Would you invite people into your home that do the things that you're watching on television? Would you have people killing a whole bunch of people and using these mass weapons of destruction that you would watch on television? Would you invite them to do the same thing in your home? But you are getting these messages. The avenue of those messages are your eyes and your ears, which we are supposed to submit to Allah. So we fixate on these things, and then we talk about it for a week. Oh, did you see that movie? I'll just make a fool of myself. Exterminator, because I know nothing about movies. Not very much anyway. What's it called? Terminator. I said I'd make a fool of myself. So, I.S.L.A.M wa rahmatullah. We have front seats for you guys, brother. So there I go. You guys can tell that I don't know much about this industry at all. But I know that it's a movie about a whole lot of destructive fighting and hearing lots of gunshots, apparently. Am I right about that? Alhamdulillah. Okay. And this is the reason why pornography is so addicting. The power of the sight, folks, is so great that when a person looks at a pornographic slice, what I mean is one pic, the endorphins that are released from the brain are the same as if you would suck on a crack pipe. This is proven that the excitatory state that is activated is as if you're getting high. So this is why these eyes were given to us to read the Quran. They were given to us to praise God with what we do. They are going to testify against us on the day of judgment. Every time you use your eyes in a way contrary to the Quran or the Sunnah, they are going to testify for you. Because who do these eyes belong to? They belong to Allah. We look at things we are not supposed to look at, and then we fixate our thoughts and eyes on something we are not supposed to look at. Then we have a mental image of it, and we keep thinking of the mental image, and we ruminate and ruminate. Our desires get aroused, and eventually it leads to something displeasing to Allah. So even we will start by looking at food, for example. We all need food, but we don't maybe need as much food as we'd like to have sometimes. Because some of us want to go to the all-you-can-eat banquet, and we want to sit there for 3 or 4 hours and just eat and eat and eat, and then after we eat, we don't feel like praying. That means we've eaten too much. We need to protect our eyes, and this is why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave us eyelids. No matter what we see, we can instantaneously avoid it by closing our eyes. Don't do this while you're driving. Lowering the gaze, Ghad al-Basar, and I hope I said that correctly, means restraining it. So these are meant to be restrained. They do not have free reign by Allah. Some people, this is a true story. The man that I preached for when I was 8 years old, Naran and I visited him. He was 80-some years old when we visited him, he and his wife. And we were in the car. And he said in front of his wife, "Isn't that a beautiful woman?" And I was astounded. I was shocked that this preacher did this. And I don't know if Naran said something, or I don't remember who said something, but I was surprised. And I said, "How can you look at another woman? You have such a beautiful wife." He said, "Every man looks." And Naran said, "Well, my husband doesn't. I don't see him looking at other women." And he didn't believe her. He just did not believe that people would control what they look at. So we are supposed to restrain them, not strain them. Because what a lot of people do is when they see what they're not supposed to say, they say, "Oh, astaghfirullah." And then they're just fixated on, they lower their gaze from here to here if they're looking at a woman. Or they're looking at television, they say astaghfirullah, but it's totally out of context because they don't stop looking. If I say astaghfirullah, it means I go turn the television off. Right? That's the spiritual reaction to astaghfirullah. Refraining from looking at people's aura, the sights of desire. Now, oftentimes, what's very sad to me is that people talk about this and they always point at the women. And I remember years ago, when I had more ignorance than I have today, I was lecturing in a college. And somebody said to me, "Well, why do the men pray in front of the women?" And I said to them, "Well, if a woman was praying in front of you and she said, 'Allahu Akbar,' what would you be focusing on?" The women in the class got offended and said, "Well, let me tell you something. I like to look at men's booties." And so I had to stop using that example. So they taught me something. So it's not only for women, folks. We are not sexist here. It's whatever the Quran teaches is for all of us. And I've seen some sisters checking out some guys' abs and pecs. And this is not part of the aura for a man. But the way they were checking it out, I deemed by Allah, they had some naf desire going. Like, I would like to have that. I've seen it. I believe I've seen it. It also includes refraining from looking into people's houses. Listen to this, folks. This is really the depth, the intricacies of the teachings of Islam. And they're all designed to protect us, to keep us safe, to prepare us for the hereafter. Look at this. This is beautiful. It also includes refraining from looking into people's houses. One's house conceals one's body just as one's garments conceal one. Allah has mentioned lowering the gaze and guarding one's private parts after the verse about asking for permission to enter. Because the house covers a person just as the clothes on one's body do. And here we go, this beautiful, beautiful verse in Surah An-Nur, verses 27 through 30. "O you who believe, enter not houses other than your own until you have asked permission and greeted those in them." This is one of the reasons that when we come to someone's house, by the way, this is proper etiquette, we do not stand facing the door. We don't look in the peephole. Not allowed. You'll learn later in the class what I mean by this. It's distasteful. We turn to the side, as the Prophet did. When we go to somebody's door, we stand to the side. These are just etiquettes of Islam. We say Salam Alaikum. We don't just step over the threshold until we are given permission. We are invited in. Please come in. Look at the verse. "And greeted them, those in them, that is better for you in order that you may remember. And if you do not find anyone therein, do not enter there or them until permission has been given you. And if you are asked to go back, go back. For it is pure for you." Sometimes a family might be having a family meeting. They might be something they need to deal with. So if they say, brother or sister, it's just really not a good time for visiting. I love you for the sake of Allah, but I'm going to ask you to come back. Don't give them a hard time. I can't believe it. I came all the way. I drove all the way here. You're turning me away. Now, one time in Rocky Mount, North Carolina, a man who was always on the front row at the masjid had abused his wife. I had been called to the hospital because he had given her STDs, and she couldn't speak English. I had to find someone to tell her, a woman that I could trust in Arabic, that your husband's giving you STDs. I was a chaplain at that hospital. The husband came to my house, and he started with Salam Alaikum. And he said to me, what Allah has concealed, you should not reveal. So I said, how convenient for you, brother. So you'd like your wife to be blind. Get out of my yard. I have this right by I.S.L.A.M. I've calmed down a little bit in my old age. But I said, please get out of my yard. You're a liability to my faith. I don't want faith. I don't want to be seen with you, and I don't want you to be seen in my yard. Because this is what causes Islam a problem, people like you. I'm a little easier now. I wouldn't have been quite as hard on him. But I was very upset that this poor woman could have literally gone blind because of the STD that he had given her. So you have a right, with beautiful words and eloquent speech, to tell people I can't visit right now. Okay? There is no blame upon you for entering houses not inhibited in which there is convenience for you. Now, in the days of the Sahaba, if you knew someone, often the houses would be open. They would invite you in. If they weren't there, if you needed to use the bathroom, you could go in and use the hammam. Okay? Today, I wouldn't advise that. We live in a different world. I think if I dropped by Omar's house and they weren't there and I went in and used the bathroom and came out, they might be a little upset with me. Allahu A'lam. Tell the believing men to reduce some of their, I should have said believing men and women, to reduce some of their vision and guard their private parts. This is pure for them. Indeed, Allah is acquainted with what they do. So, obviously, I love the way it says reduce some of their vision. We have to use this vision to drive. We have to use it for some worldly purposes as well. And we would have big problems if we didn't. The Prophet ﷺ said it is not permissible for a Muslim to look inside any house until he or she has been given permission. And this is from Bukhari. To even look. So I'm looking in the window. I want to see what kind of furnishings have they got. Is it modern? Is it contemporary? Is it country? What in the world? I mean, what kind of draperies have they got? It's not allowed in Islam. And we're going to see why. And it's even more beautiful as it unfolds. The Prophet ﷺ said, seeking permission is enjoined only so as to prevent looking. So you get permission before you look. Look before you leap. No, you don't leap until they say it's okay. A man from Banu Amir told us that he asked permission to enter upon the Prophet ﷺ's house when he was in a house. He said, may I get in? The Prophet ﷺ said to his servant, go out to this man and teach him how to ask permission to enter. Say to him, say, As-salamu Alaikum, may I come in? The man heard him and said, As-salamu Alaikum, may I come in? The Prophet ﷺ gave him permission to come in. So I want you to sort of see the broader picture of the importance of this. Because you might have a desire. I really wanted to see their house. I mean, it's got like 15 rooms and it's like all spread out. It's like a mansion. I don't get to see many mansions. You may have this desire. In Surah Al-Hijr, verse 88, look not with your eyes ambitiously at what we have bestowed on certain classes of them, the disbelievers, nor grieve over them, and lower your wing for the believers. Be courteous to fellow believers. Do not admire them in such a way that you will be distracted and desire for the worldly pleasures enjoyed by those who live in luxury and by which the ignorant are deceived. So when you go to those big mansions, maybe in Dr. Phillips or Alworth or something, and you look at them and you say, oh God, I wish I had this. And you begin to think, oh, I'm just nothing. I'm so poor. Look what it does to you. We're happy for the people that have it, alhamdulillah, but we want to be careful what happens to our desires when we look at things. How many of you have had an experience that you went shopping and the ring that you've always wanted was right there? And you first said, I can't afford it. And the more you looked at it, the more it mesmerized you. You need it. Your desires say, I think I can figure out a way to finance this. I think I can do this. I'm sure I can find a way to do this. Do you have 0% interest? How many months? And our desires. And the people that are smiling, I think they have some experience with this. Allahu A'lam. Allah knows best. Be content with what Allah has given you of the 7 oft-repeated verses of Holy Quran. Surah 15 verse 87, and we have bestowed upon thee the 7 oft-repeated verses and the Grand Quran. The 7 oft-repeated verses are usually understood as Surah Al-Fatiha, the opening, and they sum up the whole teachings of the Quran. Imagine that if I saw something and I became aware that I was covetous, or that I lusted after having that, I would begin to recite Al-Fatiha, to redeem myself, to bring myself back, to recenter myself in terms of my spiritual soul. And we recite Al-Fatiha 17 times a day if we just do the farida of the action, the fard. Do not be impressed and look repeatedly admiring worldly pleasures and those who are enjoying them, such as exotic food and drink, fine clothing, beautiful houses, and adorned men and women. For all of that is the adornment of this world in which those who are deceived rejoice, and those who are wrong enjoy it by ignoring the hereafter. There's nothing wrong with wealth if you can handle it. The most important thing is that my soul must be connected to the divine. I must be very, very unattached to it. And that's very hard for most humans to do. It will all soon end and cease to be, and those who love it will die. Then they will regret, when regret will be of no avail, and they will realize the state they are in when the resurrection begins. Allah has made it a test and a trial, so that it may be known who will be deceived by it and who will be better in deeds. This prevents the poisoned arrows from the shayateen and our nafs and our ego from reaching our heart. Remember, you are not your thoughts. You are not your thoughts. Unless you materialize that thought, they are not you. They're not a part of your personality profile until you actually do it. And after you do it, if you repent and amend, they are erased from your personality profile. And unless you repeat it, they're no longer you, according to the Islamic paradigm. And this is the beauty and the mercy of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. This creates a heart focused on Allah. Wandering eyes distract the heart and creates alienation from one's Lord. It brings darkness instead of light into one's heart. So, for example, if I go out today and I see a car that's a Bentley or something, and maybe I'm looking at a couple of $100,000, do I process that the soul will be vexed when I get that monthly bill? When I have a car payment of $700 or $800, is it going to still be a blessing? Because most of the things that we own in this world, we are slaves to them. So we own a home, we have to maintain it. Whatever you own owns you. It actually stops you from being liberated to move in many respects. Nothing wrong with it, but it is a trial. Everything we own is a trial. Do we say that la hawla wa la quwwata illa billah, there is no power or might save Allah? I have this home because Allah blessed me with it. I have this car because Allah blessed me with it. Or do we say, no, man, I worked, I make my millions, and I did this, I did that, I did this. And then what happens is we become I and ego oriented. We become self-oriented. We begin to praise ourselves, which is also another form of shirk. In Surah An-Nur 24 verse 30, tell the believing men and women to lower their gaze from looking at forbidden things and protect their private parts. Let's look further down at verse 35. Allah is the light of the heavens and the earth. The parable of Allah's light is as if there were a niche and within it a lamp. So it's a very, very beautiful, it's one of my favorite parts of the Quran. When we think about the heart, if there's a light in there, that light is the intellect of the heart. That light will be the center, the lub, right in the middle, and it will penetrate all the other three layers of the heart, radiate and manifest itself outside of us, if it's there. But if at the center of my heart is my desires, I will kill, and you'll see this in a hadith before long, I will actually kill my spirit. The likeness of Allah's light is in the heart of Allah's believing slave who obeys Allah's commands and heeds Allah's prohibitions. If the heart is enlightened, blessings will come to it from all sides, but if it is darkened, calamity and evil will come to it from all places. And when we think of calamity, we think of a bala. We actually bring tests to ourselves. Whatever exists of innovation, misguidance, following whims and desires, avoiding true guidance, and turning away from the means of happiness and focusing on the means that lead to doom, that will be recognizable by means of the light that is in the heart. If that light is lost, then one will feel like they are blind, stumbling in the darkness. So what I notice is that when students don't sit at the foot of a scholar, the feet of a scholar, because most people have two, for 3 days, their heart begins to die. And this is from authentic ahadith. So people will say, I just feel numb. I just feel dead. I don't have any light. My light's gone out. Yeah, because you hadn't had any spiritual food. That's the way it works. Protecting the eyes generates true insight, which can distinguish between truth and falsehood, sincerity and lies. Remembering that if I don't have that light in here, and that light is covered by the veils of desire, what's going to happen? My light's going to go out. And I'm going to become focused on those desires, and I'm going to serve them. I'm going to be devoted to them instead of to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Although Allah rewards Allah's slaves for his or her good deeds with something similar, and if he or she gives up something for the sake of Allah, Allah will compensate him or her with something better than it. So if you give up that thing that you shouldn't look at, Allah actually gives you something better in return. This is part of the I.S.L.A.M. We may not see it with our own eyes, but Allah has promised this to us. And we want to live in the I.S.L.A.M. And for those of you who know, I usually have the 4 levels of the heart here. I have the I.S.L.A.M. here, which is the Ruh world, the world of the spirit. And the Alam al-Dunya is the world of the nafs, the world of the desires. And if we're working down here, we're as close to the dirt as we can get. The only way we can go lower is when we die and we get buried 6 feet below. I want to live up here where the angels live, where it's light, where it's easy, where I feel good, where I don't feel heavy and burdened. Allah will compensate him or her with enlightenment. Allah will compensate him and her for restraining his or her gaze for the sake of Allah, and will open to him or her the doors of knowledge, faith, and true insight, which he or she only attained by means of the light in his or her heart. In Surah Al-Hijr, verse 72, verily by your life, O Muhammad, in their wild intoxication, they were wandering blindly. This is the wild intoxication of desire, folks. The Prophet ﷺ said that if you give a man 1 mountain of gold, he will not be satisfied, he will want another mountain of gold. So we are actually intoxicated. Many of us are intoxicated with desire. We just want more and more. We can't stop. There are people that cannot sleep. There are insomniacs because they can't get enough. They're workaholics because they can't get enough. So I'll just work all the time. I won't let my mind shut down because I want to get all these things. Imagine if we exerted that kind of energy to develop our souls. Protecting one's eyes create a heart that is steadfast, brave, and strong. Allah will give him or her both insight, power, and strength. As it says in the report, the one who goes against his or her whims and desires, the shayateen flees from his or her shadow. So every time that you resist a desire that you have that is contrary to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the shayateen actually gets out of your shadow. Doesn't touch you. He actually leaves your shadow. And this is the power of being aware of niyyah. It's the power of being aware of intention. It's the power of being aware of your thoughts and knowing where they come. Is this a thought from the shayatan or shayateen, or is this his thought from my own nafs, from my own ego? Our ears are different, and this is why music, speakers, and microphones can create such fitna, seduction, and lure. Previously, you could not hear something unless you were physically present. Let me say that majority of the scholars don't have problems so much with instrumental music. The biggest problem is with the lyrics. So if I'm listening to a song that says, throw your woman on the floor, beat her up, and do it some more, which I think was popular about 3 years ago, and I'm listening to that, what might I do? I might just do that. Because I'm being pre-programmed to do that. And there are many songs. I had the beauty of sometimes listening to my children, hearing music, and then I would say, let's listen to this together. Listen to what this song is telling you. What do you think this is talking about? Listen to what you're inviting into your heart. Now messages can be and are conveyed worldwide. It's called compulsion psychology. There is actually music that is designed to get you to buy stuff when you don't have money. Yes, there is even psychology, compulsion psychology aisles at Target. And it was really interesting because Naran and I were in a store and I'd made a speech about this and it said compulsion aisle. So help me. So you notice when you walk through these stores, they have all this stuff that last minute. Oh, let me buy this. Let me buy this. Oh, that looks good. Oh, I didn't see those chocolates when I was. And there you go. Compulsion psychology. Appealing to your whims and your impulsions and your desires. And Surah Al-Mulk, verse 23, say, it is Allah who has created you and made you grow, and made for you the faculties of hearing, seeing, and heart, understanding. Little thinks it is you give. Why do you think it says little thinks it is that you give? Because we do not express gratitude to Allah for these things when we use them for worldly purposes. We express gratitude to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala when we use them to glorify Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And the right of hearing is to keep it pure. This is a hadith, by the way. By not making it the direct pathway to your heart. I want you to think about this pathway. It's a roadway. It goes through the inner ear and the eardrum and all this, and then it goes to the brain and it affects the heart. So somebody comes and says, oh my God, you know so-and-so died. What happens? It's a pathway. You immediately feel sad, right? Oh my God, did you know so-and-so? Do you know that they're in jail today? And immediately you feel heavy, right? These are pathways to your heart, folks. So guard it. And namima and backbiting is compared in the Quran to cannibalism. If I talk about you behind your back, I'm chewing you up because I'm doing this and I'm talking about you. And I'm spitting you out to the person I'm gossiping to. I'm accountable. Not accountable, a cannibal.
But you're also accountable.
Just want to make sure everybody heard me right because I love this stuff. Let me start over again. And the right of hearing is to keep it pure by not making it the direct pathway to your heart, except for noble words that establish some good in your heart or grant you a noble trait. Indeed, hearing is the gateway through which various concepts reach the heart. Whether good or evil, somebody told me there's more than one God. Thought. Guess what? Then I started believing it. Where did it come to me? Through this ear right here. Or maybe this one. Or maybe both of them. And there is no power but in Allah. Another version reads, the right of your hearing is to keep it pure from listening to backbiting and listening to that which it is unlawful to listen. What is a sin in Islam to say is a sin to listen to. Astute believers, when they see that gossip face, and it sort of looks like this. Did you know? And as soon as you see that face, if you're an astute believer, you'll say, hold the phone. You've got that face. I may be misreading you, but if you're going to tell me something bad, I don't want to know about it. And I actually was blessed to have this habit before I became a Muslim. So I'll never forget how shocked my wife was when we first met, and somebody wanted to give me bad news, and I said, no, I don't want that. I don't want to carry that in my heart. We have two ways to close our mouth. We can close our teeth, which you see could still do damage. If you ever do that again, I'll kill you. So you can still do damage with the teeth closed. But try to do that like this. But I can't get a syllable out. I can just grunt. So God gave us all of these protections. Just don't talk. The nature of the thoughts of the nafs is that they are just repetitive. They come over and over and over again, and they will always be related to one of the desires. Something I want. The thoughts of the angels are always for good. They are very light. The things about the thoughts of the shayateen is that the more one follows them, the more that the shayateen will pass you on to other shayatinic thoughts. So the more you think about evil, what happens? It grows like a cancer. The more you think about good, what happens? The more good and the more value you produce. The more one follows the thoughts of the nafs, the more that those desires, or that desire, becomes solidified in you. And then what does it become? A habit or an addiction. The good thing is that the more you follow the thoughts to the angels or of the angels, the more they will pass you on to other angelic thoughts. The more you think about Allah, the more you will be inspired to think about Allah. It is only when we follow the thoughts of the angels that we start to feel that lightness and likeness. Why is it that when you struggled through the raqa'ah and tarawih, and you were tired and yawning and you knew that you had to work the next day, that after you left the masjid you were inspired? Everybody to finish the tarawih, they said, brother, let's go for coffee. Because they got energized. After they eat that big meal at iftar, and it's because they didn't eat according to the sunnah, they say, oh God, am I going to get through 20 rak'ah? But then after they do it, they have energy. I was speaking to one of the Hifz students Friday after Jummah. He said, Imam Sykes, I just cannot get my sleep patterns corrected. I just want to stay up all the time because I didn't sleep during Ramadan. So we feel good. The more we spiritually struggle, the better we feel. But if we follow the thoughts of the shayateen, we will never be happy, let alone the nafs. It is impossible. It will plague you and it will progressively get worse. Addictions are not just substance related. Grown people are addicted to video games, pornography, shopping therapy. We call it retail therapy. Junk food, negativity, junk thinking, pain, work, gambling, and sex. And I could keep going. That's why I put the ellipsis at the end. Because I'm sure that everybody here, we could go around the room and you could give me another addiction to add to this. These are irresistible, repetitive, maladaptive, destructive behaviors with harmful consequences. Not only do these behavioral addictions resemble substance addictions, these behavioral addictions share neurobiological underpinnings. The underpinning of both behavioral and drug addiction is a common disturbance of the transformation of basic drives into actions. I can no longer control my drives. They've taken over me. There are 3 types of thoughts. And how does this relate to decision making? That is stage 1. That we know that the thoughts come from 4 places. We know what the thoughts look like. We know the shaitanic thoughts. They come real sly like the sly fox. They retreat. They watch you. They come back. But the thoughts of the nafs, they come through all kinds of directions, but they have a different personality. They come in and you just ruminate about them. You just think about them. Oh yeah, that was a pretty girl. She was so pretty. Next time I see her, I'm going to ask her for her digits. Well, a few days later, you ask her for her digits. And then you say, well, you know, I got her digits now. Well, let's see now what's next. And you just keep going. Yes. What is stage 2? One's inclinations, ma'al, is where one's nafs come in. Where are we? Number 1, I would say ask yourself, how aware am I of the knowledge of what thoughts do to me? How aware am I of where my thoughts came from? Did they come from the devil? Did they come from my nafs? Did they come from a belief system that came from my great-great-great-great-grandmother that passed on to my mother, but it's not Islamic? Did they come from the angels, or did they come from Allah? And what is the characteristics of the various kinds of thoughts? We need to know this if we want to live an abundant spiritual life. We might be solely at the nafs amaratum bisu, which is that reproaching soul. It's pretty messed up, that soul. It's not very alive. It's not awake. It's unconscious. Or we might be fluctuating between the nafs amaratum and the nafs al-lawama, or we might have moments when we are in the nafs al-lawama. Did I say that right? Okay. So we know that these are stages of development in the human soul. I've already covered that, and because of time I'm not going to recover it, but it's basically the stages of development where the first soul is unregenerate, the second soul becomes aware of what it's doing that's not right, according to Islam or according to Allah and His Messenger, and corrects. The third soul does it so long that they're at peace. And it's that soul that Allah will say, well done. Okay? The more effort one puts into the practice of examining their thoughts and actions, the ups and downs of life get less severe, and there is a steady ascending that takes place toward spiritual elevation. We're moving further and further away from the world and closer to the heaven. Literally, spiritually. Depending on where we are will depend on our natural inclinations. This is the meaning of the hadith of our Prophet ﷺ. None of you truly believes until his or her al-hawa, his or her desires, he or she desires or loves for their brother and sister what they desire for themselves. So desire is something we need to really understand. What are the desires? They appear in the nafs because the nafs are the individual desires of the humans. Al-hawa, singular, hawa. In Arabic, al-hawa, I've put it here in Arabic for you, refers to vain or egotistical desire, individual passion, and or impulsiveness. Islam is a religion of discipline, and mankind is a creature of desire. But by following the Sharia laid out by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, mankind too can go through life with minimal chaos. True freedom does not mean aimless following all of your human desires for food, drink, wealth, and sex. On the contrary, freedom means being able to control one's base desires and fulfilling them in a proper and legal way according to Allah. So we know that the Messenger of Allah said, when we differ in a matter, we refer to Allah and His Messenger, not a thought that I might have picked up somewhere. That's why when I'm teaching you, I always give proofs. The Prophet ﷺ said, verily al-hawa, the desires, is the hithar. And I wanted to put this in. I was calling Amani this morning. I was trying to find this word in my Arabic dictionary, and in the shower I had a realization about the word, but I still couldn't find it. So we talked about it on the phone this morning. Of the hellfire which surrounds it, he or she who walks across it will fall in hell. Hithar means fence. It is the fence of hell. The fence of hell is desire or desires. Allah has created people in a world of trials and tests. And Allah has made paradise the abode of Allah's friends and beloved ones, who preferred Allah's pleasure over their own pleasures and preferred obedience to Allah over their physical comfort. Allah has made hell the abode of those among Allah's slaves who disobey Allah and preferred their own whims and desires to the pleasure of their Lord. Jannah is surrounded by hardships, and the hellfire is surrounded by desires. So this helps you to understand this word in a better way. Struggle is healthy, folks. What does struggle do? It actually builds character. It builds confidence. The more I struggle on the weight pile, the more weights I can lift. Yes? Nothing will help you to reach Al-Jannah, paradise, except going through hardships, and nothing will lead you to the hellfire except whims and desires. Both are veiled as described. So whoever tears down the veil will reach what is hidden behind it. So the veil of Al-Jannah is torn down by going through hardships, and the veil of the hellfire is torn down by giving into the whims and desires. And hardships include striving in ibadah, in worship, and persevering upon that. And sabr is the face of hardship, and restraining one's anger, forgiving and having long suffering, giving voluntary charity, having ihsan, excellent behavior with those who mistreat you, having sabr against desires, and so on and so forth.
What is sabr?
Patience. So I hope that I thought, can it be perimeter? And no. So I think I was able to hopefully describe that. I'll check up with Amani and see if I made good sense afterwards. She's my Arabic consultant. In Surah 79 verse 40, but as for he or she who feared the presence of his or her Lord, and prevented the soul from unlawful inclinations, lust, then indeed paradise will be his or her refuge. So here is the Quran to prove what I just showed you in Hadith. Let me read it again. It's very powerful. But as for he or she who feared the position of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, presence of his or her Lord, and prevented the soul from unlawful inclinations, lusts, thoughts, blah, 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 then indeed paradise will be his or her refuge. Following desires can develop into a very destructive sin and corrupt one's iman. Ali ibn Abi Talib said, the thing I fear for you most is following desires and having extensive hopes about this worldly life. Following one's desires block you from the truth, and having extensive hopes make you forget the hereafter. Verily, this worldly life is departing, and the hereafter is approaching, and each of them has its children. So be children of the hereafter, not children of this world. For today there are opportunities to do deeds, and there is no reckoning. But tomorrow there will be reckoning and no opportunity to do new deeds. There are people where all of their desires are entirely in accordance with Allah and the Prophet ﷺ. that person loves and desires what Allah loves and desires, and the Prophet loves and desires, and they dislike what Allah and the Prophet dislikes. If this individual has a thought that comes to their heart from shayateen or from their nafs, they will have a natural and spiritual aversion to it if they are in the presence of Allah. This is why in the end the good thing is that at first our nafs is our worst enemy, and as we cleanse and educate the nafs properly, the nafs actually become good. So we know that all human beings are born with a jinn. And once the Messenger of Allah ﷺ was asked, do you have a jinn? And he said, yes, but I made mine a Muslim. So that's the goal, folks. We want to make our egos and our nafs be Muslim. Make our desires be according to Allah and His Messenger, inshallah, Rabbil Alameen. We are not Buddhists trying to eliminate desire. So folks, listen, hear me out. I'm not trying to eliminate desire. I'm trying to get you to see in your soul what it does to you. Humans will always have desire. The key is to desire what is pleasing to Allah and to desire what is displeasing to Allah. When we put in the effort, eventually one will come to desire good, so that when you have a bad thought, you will naturally have an aversion toward that thought, and that will assist you in not doing it. In the early stages, depending on where we are in the hierarchy of the nafs, is that if you have a bad thought, it is possible that it could be something haram, something that comes from the heart, but you won't do it, and this is where we have to struggle. I'm looking at time, and I'm trying to decide whether we should finish this next week. How's everybody feeling? You pumped up for more knowledge, or you want me to wind it up and have discussion? Okay, and if you have to go, we certainly understand. But we're very happy to have you with us today. Alhamdulillah. Stage 2 is one's natural inclination, depending upon where we are in the hierarchy of the nafs, will be depending on whether that inclination is in conformance with what the Prophet ﷺ brought. Stage 3 is where you give a hukum. You give an order or judgment. And this is important. This is why knowledge is so important, folks. If I do not have correct knowledge, that which I materialize, realize, and manifest in the world will not be constructive. Perhaps I was taught as a kid, well, you know, survival of the fittest. So you just kill everybody that gets in your way. And I do that, then my soul is going to have a problem. If you don't mind, save the question till...
Could you just go back one slide?
Right there? Okay. You cannot make a judgment without knowledge. You cannot make a judgment without knowledge. If you do, you're not coming from a divine revelation, you're coming from your own nafs. Well, I have a philosophy that there is not a God. That's my thought. Imagine coming from that place. Where does your knowledge base then? If you don't know something, how can you determine something or make a decision or judgment about something? It's impossible. Every decision you make is made because of thoughts. We have to have knowledge. Every Muslim should be attending a weekly gathering of knowledge. This is why people have been for centuries throughout Islamic history from east to west. They would sit regularly to learn. This is where and how we make sound judgment. When we make a judgment, there are three things that we consider. Number one, is it halal or haram? We weigh that thought in the scales of Allah's law, Sharia, in the vastest understanding. Things are not always black and white. It is a continuum. There are certain things that are absolutely agreed upon that are haram, and there are certain things that are absolutely agreed upon that are obligations. And then we have a vast array of things that are in the middle that are permissible. We also have those things that some say are recommended, and some say they are permissible, and others say they are offensive, whilst others will say that they are permissible or makruh, which means distasteful. And I want to show you this because most people are not aware of this. These are terms that you're going to hear, and you need to know what they mean. Imagine if you don't know these and you think you know how to act. Just a brief lesson on terms that are very important here. So if something is fard, it is obligatory or compulsory. It is an obligatory or compulsory duty commanded by Allah with clear evidence. The Quran says it, that settles it. We have fard kafaya. For example, the janazah prayer is a fard kafaya. If one person makes the janazah prayer, a few people, it accounts for the whole community. Fard al-ain is an obligatory duty that is incumbent upon the individual. And then, of course, halal means permissible. Wajib, highly recommended, necessary. Now, Hanafi school, and I don't like to get into fiqh very much, but I want you to know that if you're in a Hanafi masjid, this means something different if you happen to be in a Shafi masjid. Salam is wajib after the tashahud of the last rak'ah, and there are 12 obligatory acts of salah. So in the Hanafi school, for example, they will say that Salatul Tahajjud, Qiyam al-Layl, the morning prayer after the last 2/3 of the night, is wajib. Why did they say that? Because Imam Hanafi said if it was something that the Prophet never ever didn't do, then it's wajib upon us. So in the Hanafi school, wajib and fard are used together, almost synonymously. But there is a slight variation, but this is the approach. We have mustahab or mandub. You'll see both of these. Recommended, favored, sometimes called the sunnah. So for example, when you're praying, your hands are supposed to rest on your knees. This one's supposed to be closed in a circle. Look at all the vast knowledge. Little things. But knowledge of these and doing these things will bring you blessings. Mubah is neutral. Makruh is disapproved, abominable, inappropriate, reprehensible, unpleasant, disliked, or offensive. It's not haram. Now what will happen is you'll go to the masjid and that's haram, haram. But it's not haram, haram, it's makruh, makruh. Such as, we as Muslim men are trained to sit down when we urinate. Because if I stand in the urinal, because of the force of gravity, it will splatter back on me and hit my pants, and I no longer have my ablution. Because I've got urine on me. This is just an example. Eating meat of horses and donkeys. Can it be done? Yes, but it is considered distasteful. Actually, in the Hanafi fiqh, it is distasteful to eat prawns. Why? They're bottom dwellers. They eat the poop of other fish. So in the Hanafi school, some Hanafi scholars say that you can't eat prawns. Shafi doesn't say that. I happen to be a Shafi, but I can't eat shrimp because I'm allergic to them. Slaughter an animal in front of another animal is makruh. But you will hear people, haram, haram. No, it's not haram, but if I love Allah, I don't want to do something that's distasteful to Allah. But the difference, folks, it's very important to get this. If I avoid a makruh, I get a blessing from Allah. If I do a makruh, I will not be punished. The same as with mandub. Mubah, thank you. I have to make sure I think before I speak. Mubah, if I do it, or if I do a sunnah, like for example, wear a kufi. Nowhere in the Quran does it say wear a kufi. In the Quran, sorry. If I wear one because the Prophet ﷺ wore it when he prayed, I'll get a blessing. If I don't wear it, I won't get a punishment. This is the mercy of Allah. But look at all of the knowledge just surrounding the category of deeds in Islam. And we maybe haven't even scratched the surface of even the fact that the thoughts might come to the shayateen or our nafs. So we have makruh tanzihi and makruh tahrimi in the Hanafi school. We don't have that in the Shafi school. I thought I wouldn't go into detail, but I want you to just recognize that you will hear these terms, and it might be a good idea for you to do your own self-study to get a deeper understanding. And of course, haram is forbidden, it's unlawful, and it's sinful. So we have things that are very clear. The more scrupulousness we have in general, the better when it comes to knowledge to make that judgment. There needs to be a lot of correct knowledge to make a proper judgment. Many people are not comfortable with their self where they are. They either do too little or too much. They have one or the other extremes. Knowing where we are and how to progress slowly with sabr, patience, the patience, is what it is all about. This is spiritual maturity. We have a thought, we have an inclination, and then we make a judgment. Where do we make the judgment from? The Quran and the Sunnah. Okay? Based upon the judgment is where we have the niyyah, the intention. And when niyyah becomes strong, you have azam. And that's where you get resolution and action. So I'm going to stop here today. Inshallah, because we have some exciting thing. We have someone that wants to do their shahada today, and I do want to do the questions with you just to see if we can check for understanding. So let me fast forward to the questions.